Welcome to another episode of Media City Radio, Legend in the Game, where we celebrate the creatives, visionaries, and pioneers shaping the culture. I'm your host, Felix Natal Jr., and today I'm sitting down with a true legend in the world of street art and muralism. From Trenton Walls to MetLife Stadium, his work doesn't just color neighborhoods. It brings communities together, inspires youth, and tells powerful stories through paint. He's not only an incredible artist, but an educator, a culture builder who I had the honor of working with on several projects. Please welcome my brother, the one and only Leon Rainbow, to the show. Leon, what's up, man? Glad to have you here. How you been?
Hey Felix, I'm excited. You know, it's been a while since I've seen you and stuff. I'm super excited to be here, and a lot has happened since the last time we got together.
Well, first of all, I'm glad to have you today. Could you please remind a little bit for the listeners? Let's talk about how we met and where our creative paths first crossed.
Okay, I think we met. There was a body painter that was in your old studio in Passaic, and she put out an ad on Craigslist. So this lets you know how long ago it was, and it was like trading body painting. Like, she'll teach you how to body paint, and then also professional photo services to paint her studio. So I'm like, I wanted to get into body painting, and I'm like, yeah, let me check it out. So I came down, I painted her studio, and then that's when I met you. And then we kind of vibed, and we started doing the different body painting shoots, and we started painting different parts of the studio, different walls. We did celebrity backgrounds and for different magazines and all that type of stuff. So we did a lot of different projects. It was a lot of fun. And man, I don't know what year you think that was. Maybe
I want to say 2006.
Yeah, I was thinking around that too. Is when we first met. Was probably man. It's coming on like what, almost 20 years, man.
Yeah, man, and I'm just amazed by all the stuff I've been seeing you've been doing, brother. So I was like, I definitely had to have you up today. I was like just blown away by even what you've been doing with the kids and the community. So I was like, I definitely wanted to bring you up today. At all those projects, which ones you think stood out the most to you? What was your favorite or one of your favorites?
So I guess one of my favorites was the Trenton Prison mural project that we did last year. So it was like the highest budget that I had so far, which was $150,000 total budget. And it also was the largest wall that I did. So it was 350 feet long and 20 feet high. So it's basically a football field long.
Wow.
It was, and what's crazy is I have been trying to get that wall for like 10 to 15 years. And also it's 3 blocks from my house. So every day I was driving by it, and it was like, it was done in like the late 90s, but it was kind of like, I don't know if it was community, but it was okay. It was like Babe Ruth baseball. So when we first got the AAA baseball park, they had painted that mural. And it was, I don't want to hate on nobody, but it wasn't that great. You know what I mean? It wasn't rendered. But, I feel like for the time, maybe in that area, people weren't really doing murals like that, especially in Trenton. That was like one of the first big murals that ever was. But it was just like such a historic it's like a landmark. You know what I mean? Like people would be like, that's New Jersey State Prison too. So that's the other part of it. But I put together, so I drove by one day, they were doing the concrete work. Then I seen them priming, and I'm like, yo, maybe they're either painting over it or they're doing a mural there. So they basically were setting it up to do a mural. And I never would have figured it out because it was going through the county. And to me, it's a state prison. You would think the state. So everybody I was talking to over all those years was the state. So I never would have got that mural like that. But what happened was they had put it out as an open call, like a national open call. And, I put together a group of artists. So me and my partner, Busta, we were the lead artists, and we did the background. We did pretty much everything except for the inside of each letter. And then we had us and then 5 other artists. Each artist did the letter. So each artist, it says Trenton real big. So in each letter is a different artist on the inside. And I had that concept. I had that idea mocked up for almost 10 years or 15 years. And I had tried to pitch it to them so many different ways, and it never went through to the right person. So we were able to get that. It was, and we did a lot of back and forth with the design and different things. All the portraits had to get changed multiple times. And when we finally we just ran through it in like a month. We had 2 lifts. We had everything we needed right there. We had to work with them a little bit on the regulations as far as, since it was a state prison, even though I'm like, we're on the outside, you know what I mean? We're not locked up, but there had to be an officer out there all the time that we were there. So it kind of limited.
They probably just want to make sure he wasn't trying to break nobody free.
Yeah, I don't
think he might have a cousin or somebody.
Yeah, I don't think nobody ever, one time when I first moved to Trenton, I remember they tried to get out, but there's nobody ain't never broke out of that thing. It's I feel like maybe, I don't know, it's so thick though, it's so big. It's like a fortress, you know what I mean? Like when you go back in the day and you see like a castle, it's like that, It's like a whole city block of just concrete, But it was a great canvas.
What drew you to graffiti and street art in the first place?
Man, when I was a kid, I was about maybe 5 or 6 years old. And hip hop had just became like Main Street. This was like in the 80s and stuff. And I started seeing like Breakin', the movie Breakin', and Beat Street, that was like came out.
Classic.
And then I started seeing the magazines and the books where, the books was like spray can art, subway art. Those were like, that was all we had, And then there was a couple other ones. And just like, I was like, when I seen kids painting subways, like, it just like blew my mind. I'm like, dang, these kids, they're like 13, 14, 15-year-old kids, and they're painting on subway trains. They're stealing paint. They're, taking spray caps off of whatever and creating this art form that we have today, So once I seen that, I just was like, man, I want to do that. But I lived in California, so there wasn't no subways over there. But I did get into tagging in California. We call it bus hopping. So what we used to do is we would cut school. And when I was in like junior high and high school, you could go anywhere in our county for $1. It was called a day pass. So we get the day pass. We'd go all over the buses and we would just tag the insides of the buses. And that was like what's called bus hopping. But, it was fun. We, just kids stuff, rebellious, stealing paint, and just like, fighting different crews and, drinking or smoking or whatever, just like, it was just a crazy time, and, but it definitely like was my introduction to graffiti. But when I moved to New Jersey, I had stopped for a long time because when I lived in North Jersey, there wasn't any graffiti that I know of. I mean, there was, but I didn't know that, you know what I mean? And then when I moved to Trenton in 97, I was like, man, by like 99, I started doing like the first little mural walls in the city. And from there, it just kind of blossomed,
Do you remember your first piece or first wall that you did?
I guess I had done like none of them were really good when I lived in California. I had done a couple, but when I first moved to Trenton, there was a parking lot, and the city let me do a mural. It wasn't that great, but to me, it was amazing. It was like 100-foot wall, and, it was my first time doing a big wall, but it just like, I didn't really know what I was doing at the time, and this was like in 99, 2000. But what happened was eventually they destroyed that parking lot and built a garage there. So there's one little piece of that wall left that's like 10 foot by 10 foot. And, but it was like, George Washington. It was like hands putting pieces into a puzzle. And it had like kind of Trenton things. And then like in 2003, I met one of my mentors, which is Pose 2, Max Moses, and Sue and Bass. Like a lot of these artists were in Philly, and they were already well established. They already, like Pose had already traveled the world doing graffiti in different places and was one of the in one of the biggest crews. So those guys really taught me how to do graffiti. That I, a lot of the skills that I use now.
Was there a special moment where you thought, this is definitely the right path, this is what I want to do?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that was one of the ones when I started learning how to do graffiti. Because when I was coming up, all the people I knew were tagging, and then I always wanted to do pieces and murals and kind of go farther with it, but I didn't know how. And then there were certain things like there's certain techniques and stuff you can't, like, looking at magazines, looking at movies, you can't really pick up certain things. It's just like if you watch a YouTube video of somebody painting or somebody doing photography, you're not going to really be able to get certain things that they're doing just by looking at it. But if somebody tells you how to do that, that really changes your trajectory, and I was able to start to learn how to do different things, and then started doing kind of like more commercial projects, and one thing led to another. I started painting more, so everything kind of fell in after that.
One thing I noticed is that you like to give back a lot. You're just not painting walls, but you're building community. What does it mean to paint with the community versus the community?
Absolutely. I mean, I love working with the community. What some people don't realize until I let them know is that it's more work to work with the community. It's just like if you do a photo shoot. If you do a photo shoot, you do the photo shoot, boom, it's like gonna come out amazing. Everything is whatever. But if you're teaching somebody to do it, I feel like there's a certain amount when you work with the community, there's a certain buy-in that they get, there's a certain pride that they have. Like, say if you have kids work on a mural, it's different than if they watch me paint a mural. You know what I mean? Like, and the way I look at it too is just like, you never know what's gonna help different people. That same kid 20 years down the road might do something, that's great. You know what I mean? Or, not everybody's going to be an artist, but, I feel like just that pride that the community gets of having a say and just working, there's different ways though. The two main things that I do is like a brainstorming session where we get all ideas and then I design based off that. And then the other one is where we actually have the people do hands-on, and then there's the other thing is like, you want this to be usable or do you want it kind of going to be good? So it's like to try to find that balance where there's a certain point where you have to cut that off and you have to kind of finish it up so that it looks good.
So projects like Jersey Fresh Jam, Increase the Peace, Windows of Soul, which one hits you the deepest?
I mean, Jersey Fresh Jam is amazing. It's one of those things. It's a labor of love. Every year, I'm like, man, am I going to do this again? It's so much work, to do a festival, a free festival like that. But it's just like every year, people get so excited about it that it's just like, I'm going to do it, whether I get sponsors, whether I get the art, the artists is the easy thing, and the musicians is the easy thing, I feel like, other than dealing with people's attitudes, you know what I mean? But just everybody wants to paint, everybody wants to perform, it's such a good vibe there. But the Increase the Peace one has been amazing too. That was like my second mural series. So to try to do like multiple walls with a theme of peace and then have different community partners buy in, it's more complicated, but it's amazing to, because our cities, there's a lot of negativity that happens, so to me, it's important as an artist to put out messages of peace, if you can, you know what I mean? So luckily, I was able to we did about maybe 6 or 7 of those walls, and we're trying to do one this summer. It's been challenging lately, the last 4 or 5 years, is finding different walls to actually do the murals. That's been one of the more challenging aspects of it. As we have funding, we have the community partners for the student interactions and have the kids to work and help on it. It's just finding the right walls in the right areas. Because one of the things that we're trying to do now is after the first couple is we're trying to do one in each ward, each section of our city, so that each section has a mural representing peace.
That's dope. And that's just with the artists, or that's also with like the people in the community as well to help out with it?
So what we're doing is we're working with a nonprofit called Isles, and that in the city of Trenton. So they have different like summer youth groups and stuff like that. That's mainly what we're working with on that project. So some of the kids with the Isles youth group is kids that already had gotten in trouble. So it's kind of like another trying to get them on a different path, and then it's actually the opposite for the cities group is kids that were kind of exceptional and have done a lot of stuff. They're giving them like they're running a lot of the summer camps and different things. They're actually working for the city. So it's kind of reverse, but those are the two student groups that we're working with to do those murals. But it's really great for those students. A lot of them, I've seen them go from just like, just not really feeling it. But then like, when you paint and you're a part of something and then you see it go from a blank wall to something amazing like that, I feel like it's hard for them not to not to get excited about it.
Why is community engagement such a big part of your mission?
Man, it's just, I think having the community a part of the project and a part of the process is, because they're going to be the ones that's going to see it all the time. You know what I mean? And like, I feel like it's important because it's going to be going into their community that they get a say in what goes in their community. Sometimes it's like, I just like to just paint and do my thing, but at the same time, I feel like for a lot of the projects, especially ones that are going to be there for a long time, it's important to have the community be a part of the process of what goes into their walls and what goes, you're not just like, it's almost like you're not putting an ad there. You're just including the community as much as possible. Sometimes the community outreach is difficult, that like I've had one project during COVID that stalled out because we couldn't get groups together, you know what I mean? So it was written the community.
It's funny because you guys always got masks on regardless because of the spray paint,
right?
And still gonna get them together, right?
Things like the COVID was able to was like almost, I hate to say it like that, but it was like a windfall for me, because a lot of my profile, a lot of my stuff came from started in the COVID era, because what happened was we're naturally socially distanced, so everybody's 10 feet apart on the wall or 6 feet apart on the wall. So that was an issue. We could go outside. We kind of, the things that the events kind of died out, but we were able to start doing videos and, kind of doing different engagement and a lot of the different organizations, they had events budgets that they couldn't spend. So we were able to kind of use some of those budgets to do murals, and we were able to kind of do videos to do engagement and stuff like that.
What is the creative process when you attempt a new mural?
Yeah, so I guess what I like to do is like, obviously the main thing I like to do first is to talk to the people and figure out like, okay, what are your ideas? Get the ideas of what the different organization has or whatever the content, whatever the group is that you're working with, get their ideas. And then I always, one important thing that a lot of people skip over is I make sure that I get a contract and a deposit. I don't do anything
about either one of those.
Nothing.
I'm the same way.
Nothing,
so
because I've gotten burned so many times being an artist that, it's very important. Like, I don't do any designs. I'm like, if you look at my work or my website, you should be able to tell that I could do the project. You know what I'm saying? So I will do the designs, but I'll make sure that I have a deposit. And then, once we do that, if we have community engagement or if we have, like I say, if we're doing a brainstorming session, that has to be done right away. Once you do the brainstorming session, you figure out what the ideas are, what the different things, and then you create a full color mock-up. Like, this is exactly what it's going to look like or very close to what it's going to look like on the wall. Then, you go back and forth with the client. And then once they approve that design, then we figure out what it takes to do the actual painting. Does it take a lift, or how long is it going to take? Scheduling sometimes can be interesting, So a lot of it, once you have the design approved, that's when you really schedule the actual mural. And then you paint it. It's so crazy that a lot of it, I don't know if there's any artists, a lot of it is business. You know what I mean? All the back end stuff is so frustrating at times, but it's just
that's the part no one understands as
right,
a creative, the business aspect.
Right. Like everybody's like, oh, you're just doing this project, because all these projects are coming out. Like I just did 2 back-to-back projects or 3 back-to-back projects, but I had 6 months to a year worth of doing emails and going back and forth, doing design changes, scheduling and doing all that of the administrative part before we could do the painting. Is the stuff that we like to do, just like the photography, the actual shoot is what you want to do. But it's like you have to get through the administrative part to be able to do that, which takes much longer usually.
So that kind of answers my next question. So I would say you probably sketch things out instead of just freestyling.
Yeah, I mean, it really depends. Obviously, one of my main goals is to get to the point where people are like, this is the wall, this is the budget.
We trust you. We love you. We already know what you are capable of. Just do your thing.
Absolutely.
That's the same way when I shoot.
Exactly. But in reality, the way that, like, I'm waiting for that. I'm hoping that comes. There's a lot of artists that are very popular. I'm like, dang,
they have the creative freedom, and you're like, why can't I get that kind of creative freedom?
Yeah, I mean, that's the creative freedom. More creative freedom is always my goal. It doesn't always work out like that. A lot of the stuff now is kind of a mix where I'm able to do what I do, but I do include different things for the business, and it's more of a collaboration than me just doing my thing. But
it's funny because that was one of my next questions too. How do you manage creative freedom versus meeting client or city's expectations?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the other thing too that I feel like that's important is that I do graffiti. So, like, if it keeps my creative juices flowing is by actually going out and painting graffiti or painting non-commissioned projects. I feel like one of the things with doing everything where you're having to do mock-ups and you're working with different organizations and all that, like, to me, that process of the business of art kills your creativity. But if you can do your own art and really create, then, that kind of renews your creative juices. So that's what's important to me is kind of having a mixture of kind of pay work and work that I do for myself.